Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show today. Christmas is coming, or so they keep telling me, or Pam keeps going, shh, no Christmas. But it is, unfortunately. We just have to wear it, I suppose. Anyway, those of you who are looking for Christmas presents, we're still open for business, so everything's ticking along nicely, although postage is a bit of an issue at the moment, particularly in Victoria. Sending stuff to Victoria tends to take a little while. It gets down to Victoria a day after it leaves here in Coffs Harbour, and then it hangs around Melbourne for a while. So, hey, anyway, not to worry. So, busy day today. This is our second last show for the year. Now, what I'm going to do next week, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing next week so that you've got time to think about it during the show. We're going to have a little Q&A next week. Rather than me spending a whole lot of time making stuff, have a little Q&A. Now, if you've got questions that you need to ask and you haven't asked them before, there's no such thing as a silly question. If you're missing something or something has got you stumped and I need to do a bit of research on it, what you'll have to do is you'll have to email me the question, and then I'll answer it on the show at the end of the next week. So there'll be a little bit of prac stuff because I think I've got to have to finish off the trays completely, and then we'll go into our little Q&A. Now the Q&A will only go for the full hour, and it will be our last show for the year, because then we're going to have a break. We'll break for a month. So towards the end of January, we'll get started again. And those of you who have subscribed, you'll be able to, you will get a notification as soon as we decide which day we're going to come back. Now, we haven't set aside a particular day, so it'll be, we will let you know through either Instagram or through the normal channels on YouTube. So that you'll just have to keep an eye on your social media to see that. So think of up some questions, but relate your questions to the shows that we've already done this year. Okay, so anything outside of that means I've got to go digging around looking for lots and lots of different bits of information, and I may not know what you want anyway. So we'll give it a shot and see how we go.
Still respond to people on the chat.
We'll still respond to what you say on the chat, so that's not a problem. It's still going to go the normal techniques and normal ways we do things. So anyhow, today's show. Now last week I put together this lovely little tray. Now the tray itself is one of two that goes in the box. And I got this one here finished completely, and so we ended up with this lovely little tray. As you can see, I've got this, the lifter is actually made from the same material as there is on the lid, right? Got some nice bays in the bottom of the box. Now, the other little feature about this box is that we've got dovetails in the corners, right? So right in the corner here, we've got these cute little dovetails. Okay, now we cut those in before we actually did the dovetails on there. And then when we turn the box over, you can see that we've got the dovetails showing through on the bottom. Now, this piece here looks like we've put that through there and put two separate bases in. We actually didn't do that. We've actually got one base, and that helps with expansion. So we want to keep that as one solid object rather than try and make two different bases. And we have to make a piece of this fit on the bottom. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do that today. So where I got up to with the other one, this one here, you can see I've got the base in the bottom of it. I've got my dovetail cut through the side, so you can see that there. And then when you look over the bottom, you can see the dovetail cutouts in the bottom of the box. Okay, so you can see that there and there. So what we're going to do now, and this is what we did last week. I showed you how I went about this one last week. I've cut dovetails in the end of here. Okay, so I've cut that to the size, and I've got my dovetails in the end of there. And I've also cut the rebate in the bottom of here. Sorry, the top edge. And I've made my piece of material that fits into the groove, right? Now that was a 1/8 cut. So the router bit that I used was that one there, which is, I'm just going to get it so you can see it. It's a Carby Tool product, TSRW4 1/8 spiral bit. That was the router bit that I used to cut the rebate in here. Okay, so if you missed it last week, go back to my last show and you'll show, it shows exactly how I did that. So when we've got that done, now I have to fit this into here. So all I'm going to do is glue that in there. But the problem that I have, if we go back to the smaller camera, the problem I have is this rounded over in the corners. The end of this is not rounded over, so we need to round that over so that it will fit in there nice and neat without that little gap that you can see there. Okay, so we don't want that little gap, so we've got to round it over. Now, there's a number of different ways of doing that. I can go over to the sander and I can get my sander and I can round it over a little bit like that. But the easiest way to do it, I found, is a little bit of 100 grit sandpaper. And all I'm going to do is just round over that side, turn it around, round over that side. Do the same on the other end. So all I'm doing is just rounding over. I'm not doing the whole lot. I'm just doing the bottom edge where I'm going to fit it.
David Rowlands is funny. He reckons that Q&A is a good idea, but he was afraid that you're going to test us on it on the subject matter.
That could be,
Dave, been paying attention.
That could actually happen. So don't rule everything out, or don't rule anything out, as I say. That could be. That's funny. I should get some questions aside, okay, and just test you all, see how we're going.
No. It's meant to be fun.
I suppose you're right. It should be fun. So I'm just rounding over the ends. And as you can see, that's going to fit in there nicely. I won't push it all the way in at the moment because what I might do is it's just a tad tight. Just round it over a little bit more. What I did with it as well was I rounded over this edge here as well. So that's been rounded over with my TSRW, sorry, my rounding over bit. So I've just rounded over that edge there. It's the bottom edge and it fits in here so it's not sharp when you grab a hold of it. Now, a little bit of glue. So I just want to glue that in there right now. Now the thing with this is that the beauty of this is I don't need a lot of glue, so I'm just going to get myself a little bit on my cloth here. So you don't need heaps and heaps of glue in here. If we overdo the glue, let's go back to it, you're going to stain the timber, and I don't want to do that. So a little bit of glue in here, a little bit of glue in there.
As he says, oh, if you're going to ask us a question, he thinks he'll be sick next week.
You'll need a doctor's note or a note from your mum.
Brian says Brian Luckins is going to be sick. Oh no, come on guys. Promise, no questions.
All right, if you insist, no questions. Okay, so I've pushed that in there nicely, and as you can see I've got a fair bit left over, so I've got to take that off. So even it's nice and snug in there, and it fits really well, so all I have to do is take off the top edge. All right, so let me get some of this. Now I could go and do this on the drop saw, but I'm not going to do it on the drop saw. I'm going to use one of these cracker saws that I've bought from Japanese Tools in Sydney, and my little bench hook. So the saw that I have, this is one of those lovely razor saws from Japanese Tools, and it is an excellent little saw for all of this sort of stuff. So it's a pull saw, so I've got to pull it this way to actually get it to work. So it's a pull saw. And if I put my piece of timber on here, I can very carefully take off the excess. Now I'm not trying to take it off perfectly. I just want to take off the bulk of the excess, because I'm going to give it a light sand once I've got it cut off. Okay, so there's my excess off there. As you can see, it looks a little bit rough, but it's not too bad. So there's my little lifter. Okay. Now, by the time I've got all this sorted, the glue's going to be dry. So my next step is to sand the top. So again, I've got a sanding board. Now my sanding board, I've got 180 grit sandpaper on there. All I'm going to do is sand that, like so. Just try and keep it straight, not a lot of pressure. And all I want to do is make it nice and smooth on there. It's not quite there yet. Keep it vertical. Just be careful you don't roll it over, unless of course you want it rolled over at a different angle. And as you can see now, I've got it nice and flat. Okay, so it's come up beautifully. And then I'll just give that a light sand with a few other different grades of sandpaper just to take off those heavy grade cuts. Now, the next step, let's get it fitted. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to just take all this stuff away. We're going to fit. So what I want to do is I want to fit that into there, right? Now that's got to go through there, but also what I need to do is make the piece that's going to go across here, okay? Now that's quite an easy task. All I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece off the bottom of this. Because it's way too high, you can see it's way too high, we're going to cut a piece off the bottom. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the drop saw, cut myself a piece off there, and then I'll glue it in underneath the bottom of that. So I'll go over to the saw now. So just when you do this, you need to make sure that you are very, very accurate with your cutting on this exercise. So make sure you got your sort of your push block up against your fence, and we'll take it from there. So I'll just go to the other camera. Danny's got that all set up. I need to get a clamp. Just clamp this in. Now I've got that set up so that I only take off the smallest amount. I don't need a lot, so I can hold that like that. I can put that onto there. I've got my hole down nice, so ears on everybody. And there's my little piece. Okay, so all I've done is just cut myself a little piece off there, and you can see on the end of it, you can see my dovetails there. Okay, can't quite see it? No. Okay. So now we'll glue that in the bottom. So that's just going to fit straight into the bottom there. I know it's going to fit because it's done that before. So it's a little bit raised, which means I'm going to plane that off anyway. So I'll plane that off when all the glue dries. But I'll glue that in place. So back to my little bit of glue. I have a little piece of rag here. Doesn't want to play. There we go. Don't want a lot, and I had a brush. So a little bit of glue. Don't want much. Are you paying attention, Dave? Because I will be asking questions about this one. And no excuses. And that's all the glue we need. Is there a question there?
Yeah. Hozzy wants to know, could you do that? And I presume he means cut off that sliver for there. Could you do that with the pull saw also?
Ozzy, you can use whatever saw you like. The thing about it is, as you can see, it's a little bit raised. You can see here and here it's raised. So if you've got a rough surface on here and you've smoothed the other side, it's going to sit flat on your base. But the rough side here, we're going to plane that off anyway. So whatever saw you use, whether you use your bandsaw, you use your pull saw, or you use your drop saw, you know, it's up to you. But the idea is just to get at least one side flat, and if it's the bottom side that on the opposite side to your saw cut, well then you can plane the saw cut flat once you've got it glued in place. So now we turn that over. What we need to do, just need to get my other bit, is we need to fit this into here. So I need to cut some more off the bottom, but the top has to be flush with the top of that. Now, the thing about the top of it is we've already set that, so we have to get that pretty spot on. So we'll get our measurement. Grab myself a ruler. And my measurement is exactly 35 millimeters. Okay, so pencil. Coming on that. Exactly 35 millimeters. So there's my mark. So I've got to trim that off. So back over to the saw. So remember, when you do this, be as accurate as you can with it, because it's going to be, you only really get one go at it. And if you have to take any more out, it means you're pushing and pulling the dovetails out of the dovetails in the box, and that could cause a little bit of damage. So the idea is to try and make sure that you get it pretty much spot on your first go. Okay, so to the drop saw. Set my mark up. I suppose having it a little bit smaller would be better than actually having it too large or too wide. So There's my cut. Ears on, everybody. Okay, so back over to my table. Okay, now a little test. Pretty much, it's just a tiny little bit too proud. Okay, I don't particularly like the idea of having to take too much more off the top of there. So I'm going to take it back to the saw. I'm just going to give it a very slight, take the tiniest little bit off the bottom of it. So hang tight there, folks, and I'll be right back. Just got to set the saw a tiny bit. There we go. We'll give that another slightly. Ears on. Now the beauty about this is that saw is that it's got it has the laser, the light on it, and it gives me a really nice marking. So now we try it again. Spot on, perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And you can see we're flush. We've got those beautiful little dovetails showing, and because we've got a contrasting timbers, they show up really nicely. And they, once we've put a bit of finish on there, you're going to see them really, really well. You can see when I look at this box here, you can actually see how clean, clear those little dovetails look in the top of the box. Okay, you've got the contrast of the silver ash and the red Banksia. So you've got that contrast there, and then you have the contrast of that as well. So it does come up quite nice. Okay, so we glue that in. Now when that's glued in, we're then going to go into making another tray, full-blown tray. So we have to prep that as well. Now I've already got the dovetail jig set up for that, so that I can get it done in the time that we've got today. Okay. So next week what I would like to be doing is just looking for my ruler, just going to clean out the glue. Put a little bit too much in that side. A tiny little bot there. Oh, got some on this side too. Now the beauty about this is it's not going to go anywhere. It's not like you can't actually move it because the whole box is all glued together. And while you've got it in that situation there, you can actually make, and I've done that, you can make the little baize panels that go in there. Now that doesn't quite fit, but that one fits. Okay, so you can see the box takes on a whole different look once you start fiddling around doing all the little bits and pieces. Okay, so how nice is that? And it didn't take long at all. And I've got that sorted. All I need to do now is I need to sand off the bottom and take it from there. Okay, so that's the tray. I'll just leave that set aside so that the glue dries, and then we'll get on with the next part of it. Oh, incidentally, this is how they fit. Okay. You can see this is the one that I made earlier. It's completed. And then this is the other one. Want to do that again?
Yep.
So piston fit. Just like that. Okay, it's kind of sitting up a little bit because of the bit on the bottom, but apart from that, as you can see, in the top of the box, we have this lovely setup of drawers, or of trays. And when you take the tray out, you've got lots of room in the bottom of the box as well, right? So you've got to put it in straight, silly. So now what I want to do is I want to make the big tray that fits into the top of there. And this feature that I'm using here, I'm using the same feature on the sides, only reverse. This one has the silver ash in it and the red banks here as my separator. This one here is the side of the box. Okay, so that's the side of the tray. You can see there's a number of things happening here. Number one, I'm using red banks here as my lifter, silver ash framework, of course, but you can see that it's also tapered. Okay, so that's going to taper from front to back. It's going to go in there like so. Okay, so another technique on using material that's not exactly square. The ends are square to the bottom, that's not a problem, but it's not exactly square, so we have to use different technique for cutting the dovetails. Okay, so I'm going to end up with one dovetail on here, and I'm going to end up with two on there. Okay, so let's get set up. Now, don't forget your maintenance. That will be in the test, in the exam. We'll have questions on maintenance. Are you listening? So, dovetail jig. Now, I've already set it up so that I don't have to sort of fiddle around doing that. We've only got 30 minutes, so I've got a fair bit to do to get this thing done. And I would like to have it finished for today so that I can sand it all during the week, and next week we'll start the show with finishing off, or putting the finishes on and fitting the box, the bits and pieces in the box, and then we have our Q&A. So I've got this set up so that, I'll show you this first. Let's go here. So what we're going to do there, you can see I've already put my face side marks on. It's going to be like so. So it's, as you can see, it's quite a big tray. Now, if you were making one of these to carry your cups of tea to and from your bedroom, or out onto the deck so that you could sit out there with your glass of wine and your cup of tea, this is an adequate size. This is quite a big size. So you can actually use that to do those sorts of things. And all you need to do is change the way you set up your lifters. You could use all sorts of different things with your lifters, and yeah, it'll look quite nice. So that's what we're going to do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the dovetails in these pieces here. Okay, so the dovetails are there and there. And like I said, very difficult. We can't sit it in the middle to cut the dovetails, basically because we can't turn it over like that because of the width of the bits and pieces. So, technique, using each end of the jig. Now I've got it set up at the moment. The important thing to remember here is, one of the things that I say to you all the time, and I bang on it about it because it's a time saver and a mistake saver, and that is making sure that your first cut of every board, you have the face side mark out and you have the bottom of the box at the red stop. that applies, this is a question I've been asked many, many times, that only applies when you're using both stops together on an even-sided piece of material. All right? When you're using this technique, you need to use both ends of the jig. So my mantra with this one is face side out, bottom of the box against the stop. All right? So face side out, imperative every single time. So all I'm going to do is this. I've got this set up so that I cut one dovetail in one end, and I'm going to cut two dovetails in the other end. I just need to make sure that that's hard up against my stop, locked in place. Just checking, it's not quite right. Okay, and my other one is up the other end. Okay. This one's not quite right. Something wrong here. Something on the bottom of the bottom of the piece of timber. It's moved again. Like so. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to cut one dovetail here. I'm going to cut one dovetail there. This one's not exactly right, so I'm going to have to reset. Very important that you get this pretty accurate. There we go. Okay, so I'm set up ready to go. What I need to do now, I have done my maintenance. For those of you who missed the maintenance bit class, this is how it works. All the rubbish that's on top of the saw, top of the bearing, needs to be scrubbed off. You then add a very loose oil of some description. Okay, this one here you can buy from Japanese Tools in Sydney. Very, very good. And you do that to both of them. You also do that to your collet reducer if that's the way you're working. If you're screwing off the normal ones that come on Carby Tool, not Carby Tool, on Triton routers, well then it needs a clean as well. I need a spanner. I'll lock this in place. And now adjust the height. If you don't have a height adjuster, you can then sit your piece of timber on top of the jig and you can sort that from there. Okay, this is my piece, so I'm going to use that to do my adjustment. So 1/2 millimetre is all you need. Just check that. And we are above the template thickness, which is the black piece, and above the piece that's going to fit into the side of the box. Okay, so 1/2 millimetre above both of those combined. Now, if you are just starting all this sort of stuff, you'll notice I've got very thin material. This is only 7mm. Make sure you do some test joints. Now I've done all my test joints, and I've got my setup and all that sort of thing done beforehand, so that I'm not taking so much time. But I tend to be waffling on anyway, so that takes that out of the equation. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to cut these. So earmuffs on. Ears on, everybody. Now, what I want to do is, this is the other end of it. So what we do is we take this out. Just going to lay that one down there for the moment. Take this one off. Now, as I said, face side mark out, which means we rotate like so. Do not do that. You start there, you keep your face side out so the bottom of the box is up against the stop, and we move from this end to this end. The other one, exactly the same. Now, it's very important that we do this because we cannot put a stop up against here. 2 reasons. Number one, you can see the clamp overlaps the piece of timber. So what's going to happen? It will catch on the stop. So you need to have a little bit of clear area on the side, okay? And of course you can't get the stop up there because there's nothing there to hold it, okay? You can't line it up. So now two dovetails on each end, on the ends. Normally when I'm doing the internal componentry of boxes, I generally use my H10 cutter. That's the tiny little one. But the box itself has got B10 dovetails in it, which are quite large. And if I use the tiny ones, there's too much of a variation between the B10 to the H10. So I've decided to use the A10s, which is quite adequate and quite okay because you can use the timber thickness for that is between 5 and 13 millimeters, and we're at 7 mil, so we're sort of in the middle a little bit, and well, not quite in the middle, but we're close. So what we have now is we have these lovely dovetails showing in the ends of both ends. Okay, so they're going to show at the sides of the box, right? Now, often what I do also is I often put the dovetails in the front of the trays and things like that, so that when you lift them out, you can actually see the trays, see the front of them. But I didn't do that on the smaller ones, so I'm sort of keeping in sync with the smaller ones. I had them in the sides. So now we turn the jig around like so. Same process. I'm going to cut two pins. Just get it set properly. Face side mark out, you can see that, and it's pointing at my stop. The same applies to the little one. So as you can see, it is very, very small. So it's just a matter of making sure that everything is held in place the right way. Could probably use a smaller clamp, but they generally don't work with the smaller ones. Just going to make sure that's right up against the stop. So now I'm going to cut one pin here. I'm going to cut 2 pins on this end. Okay, and then I'll rotate them. Okay, so change my bit. Adjust my height. Same thing, use the opposing piece of material, that's the one that's going to go into there. Like so. And now it's just a matter of cutting these. Now, with this one here, what we're going to do is we're going to cut across the face. For those who have not seen this before, I'm going to cut across the face first of this particular one here. I don't need to on this one, but I will on this one because I don't want any tear out on the front of the box. But also you can see here, I have my face side mark out, and I have the same here. The face side mark is out and it's pointing at the stop. This one here is pointing at the stop as well. Okay, so ears on everybody. Okay, so don't forget, when you're taking these out, rotate so that the face side mark is still on the out, and then shift to the other end of the jig. Same here, that was like so. Okay, so now we rotate like so, sit it up the other end, lock him in place, and we cut our dovetails again, pins I should say. Okay, so when you're using the jig, just come in on this here again. When you're using the jig, it is very, very important that you go in on the right hand side and come out on the left hand side. Okay, so you go in on the right hand side and come out on the right hand side. That will give you the best result when you're trying to cut your joints. Okay, so we're finished with the jig. So if I take all these parts off here, I can put my jig away. Okay. So get rid of all of the bits off here. I don't need the router bit anymore. Now a fit. This is the litmus test. Let's try it the right way up, eh? So one. It's a little bit loose, but that one's perfect. There's that little click that I like when they go together. And look at that. This lovely little tray now fitted together with nice dovetails. So what I need to do now is I need to put a base in there. And I'm going to use my usual technique of putting things together to put the base in, which will be run my trench around through the inside there. And I'll do that first. This is my piece of base material, okay? So now the difference here is between this and what I normally do is these are very, very small. My piece of base material is actually 6 millimeters. I normally do 4 millimeters, but I'll show you how I'm going to fit that in a second. The reason for having a thicker piece of material is because we've got such a large area, we don't want it flexing and flopping around, and the 4 millimeter material in there doesn't give it much support. So I've added a little extra to the thickness of the base. It's not going to affect a great deal of space in here, only a couple of extra millimeters, but it will still work really nicely, and it'll be a little bit more solid and won't flex. Okay, so first, next thing is to cut around the base of that. So, a little bit of tape to start with. So I just want to lock this together. So, somebody through the week said to me that one of the problems I had last week or the week before was my tape actually tearing out the grain. So I was talking to someone during the week, and they said that they put a little bit of plasterer's tape, reversed, sticky side out, underneath the tape there, and that stops the thing from sticking. It's a really good idea. I just forgot about it, so I didn't try it today, but I might give it a shot, see how it goes. In the meantime, I haven't got the time for it today, but in the meantime, I've got to get this tray in place. Okay, now our rebate cutter. I had one here, and we're going to reduce our depth of cut, which is our normal, by taking off the bearing. I'm running out of time, folks, so I can get as far as I can, and then we'll stop at 10 o'clock. Don't forget the questions. Okay, now I'm going to set this at the height to 6 millimeters. So the top edge is going to be the same thickness as my piece of material. So what I want is the bottom of the box to be on the bottom of the tray. or the bottom of the tray to be on the bottom. You get what I mean. So the height is to the same as that. Okay, so I've just set that to the top of my cutter. Okay, so I'll just show you there. I've just set it to the top of the cutter. Can you get in there? You can just see it. I've just set it to the top of the cutter. Okay, so that's the top of the piece of timber there as well. And that means that I've got to take a little bit off the bottom. I'll have a 2mm gap underneath. So all I'm going to do now is around here, like so. You might need to come over this way. Okay, ears on everybody. Nice little trench. All I'm going to do now is finish it off by cutting the rest of it. So I need to change my bearing. Now what we need to do is go really careful with this one because we're cutting 5mm deep, and we just need to make sure that we do it the correct way. So we go against the rotation of the router bit, and we do it very, very carefully. So just take it easy with it, don't go rushing, and you should get a nice job. So, checking, move on. So now we have, and you can see this lovely trench all the way around. Okay, so that looks really, really nice in there. I've got 2 millimetres of space underneath. You don't need a lot underneath because it's a tray, and so therefore just enough to support it when it goes on to sits on top of the other boxes. So now I need to measure that while it's glued together, or while it's taped together, I should say. So I need a bigger ruler this time. Flip that over. I push into the bottom of the trench, and I have 345 to the inside edge. So if I go 349 is going to be the measurement for the length of the base. And I've got that piece here. Just going to write on it. Find a pencil. Okay, so 349 is my length, and my width is going to be 230. Should be about right. So by 230. So I'm going over to the drop saw now as soon as I've marked this. So 249. 249. Okay, to the drop saw we go. Okay, now what I have to do is I have to cut this. I've already sanded this down so you can see the shine on it. I've actually sanded that down to 600, so it's basically ready to fit, apart from a light sand with a bit of 1200 later on. But I'm going to cut that down now, so just take away the bench. There's my mark, 349. And my other mark is 230. So, now as you can see, that is way too long for my saw blade. My saw blade doesn't come all the way out here. So what I have to do is I have to set my fence up like so. Make sure I'm up against my mark. Just check my mark. 230. Clamp this in. Now I'm going to take a cut first. So here's on. Flip him over. Nice. And so that's the length of that. So what I want to do now is that'll fit in there quite nicely. So my next step is to round over my corners. All right, now I've got my sander set up, so I'm just going to go over there and I'll do that now. Lovely little corners. Okay, so they look quite nice. Now I have to get the thickness. Okay, so let's back over to our table. Now for this one, my rebate colour. And I'm afraid we've run out of time, but I think what I might do is I might continue on and cut the rebate in that and just fit it, but I'll glue it all up after hours, and next week we'll have it ready to put a finish on. Just getting rid of this. Fingers all glued up. Okay, rebate cutter, panel raising bit. My panel raising bit. Now the panel raising bit has to come up this height here. Okay, so you can see in here I've got a little bit of 2 or 3 mil. That's all I need to raise my panel raising bit. What is it? It's 3 millimeters. Cough, cough. Okay, so should have come up a little bit. Too far again. As you can see, adjusting is just got to be right on. There we go. Now, panel raising fence. I hope you're still there, folks. Some are?
Most are.
Okay, so my adjustment here is going to be 8 millimeters. That's 5 millimeters for the trench and 3 millimeters for the rebate. I can probably bring that tiny little bit back a little bit, allowing for the trench. Okay, so now I need to choose which is my nice side, and I think that could be the inside, so I need to take some off the bottom. So I'm going to do my test cut first. So ears on, everybody. Sorry about my hairy arm in there, but that looks pretty good. Okay, go all the way around now. It's got a bit of the burr on there. I just need to that off. So all the way around. Probably do without the push block this time. So here's so you can see I have just a slight little rebate all the way around there. Okay, so you can just see that. Now let's see if it fits. This is the litmus test, folks. That's pretty nice. That's a nice little tray. Look at that. When you turn it over, got a little rebate in the bottom of it. That's not such a bad thing. So I will glue that together during the week, and I will get back to you with the finished bit, and then we'll put a coat of finish on it next week, and it will all be nicely fitted into the thing. So that is just a really nice looking little tray with a cedar base. Silver ash around the front. You can see I've got a little bit of support around the front here. I've got this lovely little back edge along here, and I've got these cute little handles. So as you can see, tray making is not that hard. It only took us 30 minutes to make that. So it's quite easy. Don't stress about it. Take it nice and slow and you'll get it. Okay. So that's where we're going to stop today. Don't forget your questions. If you want me to research something for you or answer something where I need to actually do something in the show, make sure I get an email beforehand. I probably can't ad-lib too much, so that should be about all we've got. So have a good week, everybody, and I will see you all next week. Okay, so Merry Christmas to everybody as well. So take care.